Bachmann Irish Railway train set is fast approaching its 20th birthday. Dismissed by some as a piece of Irish-American nostalgia, but for Irish steam modellers it still has a lot to offer. It's time to take a closer look. Hi, thanks for joining today's review. So the first thing we're going to do is take a quick look at the origin of this train set. We'll then get into an unboxing and we'll follow that with a full setup of the full train set. We'll then take a close-up look of the locomotive and a couple of the carriages. We'll get into a running session and then we'll follow that with a comprehensive summary, scoring and a final recommendation. Okay, let's get underway. The origins of the Bachmann Irish Railway set actually go back to 1999 with the introduction of the K1 class Woolwich locomotive by Bachmann Murphy Models. It was the first of this class of locomotive that actually was introduced and was followed by a number of other models in different liveries. Also, within 2 years of that, we had 5 different coaches in the Flying Snail green livery, the coach type that is used in the set. Now these were actually with different running numbers at the time, and these were designed to go with the K1 class, or the N class as it would have been known from a CIE Irish perspective. Those original components did exist, and Bachmann US wanted to package these into a full train set for sale in the North American market, and that's really where the whole idea came from. And I've got an extract here from the 2004 Bachmann catalogue, which actually shows an advertisement for the full set. So they packaged it up with their ez-trak system, which was pretty standard with all of the sets at the time. They're HO gauge sets, and in the main that's what they were selling, was HO gauge, and this was marketed as a HO or a premium HO, when in fact it's actually an OO gauge model. So this was the package that was put together. 3 of the coach types with unique running numbers, with the Woolwich Green locomotive combined with the ez-trak, a large oval of ez-trak. That's track that actually comes with its own underlay, and it's actually a radius 4 curves on that, and we'll see that later when we do a breakout of all the components. And that's combined with their DC controller as well. So this really gives you the full offering. They also brought out 2 additional coaches, which were add-on coaches which you could add to the train. And you can see them again here. These were again taken from the 2004 Bachmann US catalogue. So this was sold through the normal channels, and this is an example here through Walters, selling at the princely sum of $260, which is pretty high amount of money back in the mid-2000s. So it was an expensive set. This was a premium set. Apparently 4,000 of these were manufactured at the time. No, I think they were heavily discounted, and I think people have been able to pick these up at a discounted rate over the years. And they did come to Europe, obviously to the UK, and here's an ad from Hatton's showing a recommended retail price here of £162.50. Again, as I say, I think people were able to pick them up for probably somewhat less than that. So this is really where the set came from. It hasn't been available through the retail channels for quite a number of years now, obviously. It's fully sold out. So if you are going to be purchasing this, you are going to be getting it through one of the auction houses, through second-hand sales ads, etc., or through the likes of Hatton's may get this as part of their second-hand inventory. So that's really the origins of the set. It was a combination of existing componentry produced by Bachmann Murphy Models, put through the kind of North American marketing channel of Bachmann, and packaged up into what is the set now that we're going to go through. Okay, so here we're going to get into the unboxing. So I've got the Irish Railway set here in front of me. It's in quite a large box, as you can see. Apologies for the bit of shine with the lights. This still has the outside cover on it. So we're going to actually take this out of the packaging now, and then we'll take a look at each of the individual parts. So this is the front of the box, and this very kind of Irishy, traditional Irish looking graphics, I suppose. And we'll take a quick look at the back here, and you can kind of see what they've got on the back. And they talk about the different track layouts, etc. So we'll take a look at this. We're going to take this out. We're going to build the oval of track that goes with it. We'll plug in the power supply, and we'll actually give this a run as a full set. And so the next thing we're going to do is we'll take a look at this. We'll take it out of the box, and we'll take a look at each of the individual parts, and then we'll get it up and we'll set up the track and get it running. And we'll also do a running session on the actual layout as well, my existing layout. So we'll do both. We'll run it with its own track, and we'll also run it on the layout. Okay, let's get to the next section. Okay, so we've taken the box out of the cover here. So this is what we see when we open her up. So you can see the track that's taking up quite a lot of space in the box. It's this so-called ez-trak. This out actually. And we'll see this later on, how you couple this together. It's basically got your standard rails, but it's built actually on a kind of a plastic support, and that's pretty good, because that kind of gives you don't need underlay with this. You effectively got a plastic underlay here, and if you're running this on a carpet, that's very handy, because you're not going to get any of the fluff from the carpet coming up through the rails as you normally would. So a bit of thought behind that. So we'll see what that looks like when we actually build the circuit. We've got this list of contents. We'll take a look at that in a minute. It comes with an oval of track, and it's a pretty decent one. So I said we'll see that later on. We've got a detailing kit up there for the coaches and the locomotive. We've got our power supply here, and with this is supposed to be a European version of it, so we'll discover that now when we get it set up. And then down at the bottom here, and I'll take there's a kind of a plastic cover here, so I'll take this off. Here we've got our locomotive, and I'll just ease this guy out of the box. Got a bit of weight in there, so this guy is interesting. So we'll be taking a full kind of close-up look at this later on. We'll do the usual close-up and 360 views on it. So this is our N-class locomotive in the green livery with the flying snail logo. It's a pretty detailed looking model, so it's a nice looking model, and it's got some good weight in it. So we will take a good look at this in a bit more detail in the next part of the review. So let's just put him there for 1 minute. So that's a good quality looking locomotive, that's for sure. And then we've got the coaches. So I have done a full separate review of these coaches. I'll put a link in the description. So I did do a full review of the history of these coaches and where they came from. They are based off some Bachmann LMS stock, and it's converted into the livery, just essentially re-liveried. And they're good quality and they run well. So I've already been running these on the layout just separately, and I picked these up separately in the past. So we will actually be able to build up a larger rake than we have here. But so you do get the 3 out of the box. You get the third class, the composite first and third, and then a third brake. So there's the 3 coaches you get with the set. So I would say nice weight in these coaches. Good, I think they are good quality and they are good runners. They come with metal wheels as well. So I think Bachmann have done a nice job on these. They do get 3 of these, which is great, and they've got a nice little protective cover there. Let's just take a quick look at this list of contents here, which kind of talks about everything we've kind of covered off. Let's say most of what's captured in this. So let's just take this guy out of the plastic. Tight fit. So it tells us what we've got here. The N-class locomotive, the third brake, the first third, and the third corridor. The radius, 22-inch radius curve, the ez-trak, as we have that, we'll put that together. We've got the re-railer here, which is nice to get. And then we've got the speed controller and the instructions. So anything else of interest in here? Kind of gives us an inventory. So this talks about the very strange font on this, the ez-trak system. It's in different languages. It talks about the controller. That's pretty standard stuff here. Nothing major there. And then we'll take a quick look here. There should be probably some information just on the locomotive, I suspect, in here. That's our 90-day warranty. That's well and truly expired by now. Oh yeah, okay. And you get the usual blowout view of the locomotive, which I think could come into use when we start looking at putting DCC into this. These are just DC only. They don't have any provision for DCC, so they do need a bit of adaptation if you want to put DCC onto them. That might be something to look at in the future. Okay, so now we've taken out the track and the controller and the power supply, and this is the basic controller here with the standard controls going from 0 to 100%. It's got forward and reverse setting on it. You can see the power jack at the back there that plugs into a modular power supply, which is pretty handy, and then the jack to plug into the track itself. So quite a nice controller, and actually performs very well, and we'll see that later on. Here's the AC adapter. This is obviously for European usage, so you would have got obviously a North American one of these if you bought it in the US. This is the modular track itself, which comes on this kind of plastic underlay, and these are radius 4 curves, as I mentioned. So these plug together, and this is the kind of easy track, as I say. So you've got to plug together the base pieces, and then also line up the fish plates to the actual track itself. So it's pretty standard track. So you just snap it in like that, just line up the fish plates, as I say, and then kind of push it home to get the connection. And it's pretty straightforward and pretty easy. It is quite plasticky, the underlay there, so we're going to be putting this on a wood surface, so it doesn't kind of give you any kind of damping of sound. If anything, it amplifies the kind of sound, the kind of noise you may want to get rid of. But it is very useful, I think, in, say, a carpeted environment, so it gives you protection against the carpeted floor. It comes with some straight track as well, and this is a railer track, and also has the power connections on either side, so you can kind of see them there on either side, which is convenient. So you can choose to power from the outside of your oval or from the inside, depending on where you're going to be sitting controlling the set. Just the connector plugs into the side there. So here we've got the full oval set up. We've got the power controller plugged in, and you can see the size of this. So this is laid out on a 6 foot by 4 foot layout here. And this is actually just showing you radius 3 curve inside the radius 4. So it's just showing you this is a full radius 4 curve here. We're just going to put the first locomotive on the track, just start it off. Pretty smooth, pretty noisy, so you're getting a lot of noise there from the plastic underlay up against the baseboard, which is noisy in itself. If you're going to put this on a full layout, you'd probably want to put some cork or something underneath this to dampen the sound. But nevertheless, it's pretty smooth, and as I say, it probably is designed to run on a kind of carpeted type environment, where it is protecting you from getting the kind of the fluff and the dust from the carpet coming up between the rails. It does give you a bit of protection, so it is pretty useful for that. So we'll just do some kind of running in here of the locomotive. This is the first time I've put it on the track, so getting through some of its paces here. This controller is a pretty nice controller, pretty smooth and pretty linear when you actually do a measurement of the voltage for the different settings. It's a pretty linear controller. It's actually quite nice. It's better than I have been using an old Lima controller for my DC circuit up to now, and this actually is a lot better than that. So just again running this locomotive through, as usual, recommend running it through for 30 minutes, so we won't wait that long. So we'll hook up our coaches here now and actually get the full train running. And again, pretty smooth. And I think these coaches, I have a separate review of these coaches. I'll put that link in the description. And they are high quality coaches. They're not prototypical, but they actually, delivery is nice, and they are a high quality coach, and they run very well. So they're very smooth here. So it looks pretty good. So really, this is, I'm going to kind of spend a bit more time. I'll just run the locomotive through here, so we give it its 30 minutes running in period. And when we actually run this next time, we'll be running it on the layout itself with the coaches. So we'll do it on the full layout to give you a view of that. But this is a perfectly good train set, a very large oval, as I said. You don't get any track mat or anything like that with it, but a very nice oval out of the box. Okay, let's move on to the close-up views. So here we're doing a close-up of the locomotive. You can see the nice livery there and the tender. Unfortunately, the coal in the tender isn't very realistic, but the overall paintwork of the tender and locomotive is quite nice. You've got the green on the wheels there. There's some added detail around the locomotive. And I say it is a good rendering of the livery. Now, there isn't very much in the cab, so I'm not going to show you a look at the cab because there isn't actually much to see. It's all very bland plastic, molded plastic in there. There really aren't any separately fitted pieces. This is a steam locomotive from, think of it, 1999, so the detail level here is not what you'd come to expect from a locomotive today. Albeit it does look good, and as I say, it is a good rendering of the livery, but it is relatively basic, put it that way. Today you would expect a lot more in terms of detail. An example of one of the coaches here, and as I said, there is a separate review that goes through all the different coach types, etc. I think that the livery is rendered very well here. I think these are actually nice coaches. They're nice detailed coaches. And you've got metal wheels as well for a train set back in this time period. That's pretty good. And they do run really well. And I say it is a good rendering of the Flying Snail livery here. These are kind of favourite coaches of mine. I do like them, and I have a number of them now. It's nice to see them here, and they were a nice part of the set, albeit they're not prototypical. They're not really based off any particular coach type. They're taken from LMS stock from the UK of the time. Giving a 360 view now of the locomotive, and again, to get a chance to give you a kind of better view of the front and back, and we actually do get a view into the cab there. So say that coal doesn't look too good. It's fine, it's passable, but it's again, you probably expect a little bit more. The cab is very basic, but the overall, again, you get the view of the livery. The effect is good, and the detailing, etc., is certainly acceptable. So, and at the time, this was a nice locomotive, a nicely detailed locomotive, I think, for that time. It is not the heaviest, and the locomotive, most of the weight is actually in the locomotive. The tender is very light, and that's probably one of the misgivings I would have. But overall, a nice looking locomotive, and I think I don't have any real issues with the look of it. I think obviously in that day it was a fine locomotive. The coaches, again, this is the 3 coaches now, all shown together, so you get a view. So you get a brake in here, and the brake has, we'll see it when it comes around, has these very nice observation windows at the back. And you can also see those rubber corridor connectors on either end of the coaches. And I think they're actually quite a nice effect, and they do give a nice look on the track as well. So we'll see here when we look at the brake coaches, which is the one on the right here. You can see those windows there, those observation windows at the very end, which is, again, quite a nice effect, which was one of those LMS coaches that this was based off. I think these coaches are really top quality and very good runners, and absolutely no problem at all with them. So I think you're getting a very nice high quality coach in this set. This is way beyond any sort of railroad level standard, for example. So now we're going to get into the running session. It's a DC only running session. This is a DC only model. The low speed there isn't much at the low end, so it kind of a pretty stern start there. Albeit it is pretty smooth. You really have to run this at least about 20% power. There's no tender pickup, so you're only getting the pickup from the main locomotive wheels there. That does kind of show, so you do have to run it at least about 20% speed to avoid it stalling when it's going around your track circuit. It's pretty tolerant, so things like the typical points, diamonds, your pico points, etc. It doesn't have any issues on those. So I'd have no derailment at all with either the coaches or the locomotive. And I'm running on radius 2 here for the start of the running session, and it's going to switch on to radius 3. It does run actually fine on radius 1 as well, and the only one issue is I have one curve on my radius 1 circuit is actually an old Lima radius 1 curve, which is actually slightly less than radius 1, and the coaches actually derail on that. That's not an issue at all, because I say you shouldn't be using that on your circuit at this point in time. It's a very old piece of track. Otherwise, absolutely fine on radius 1, 2 and 3. The maximum speed I run it at here in the session is it's running at about 30% now. I'll get it up to 50%, and that's as fast as I ran it on the circuit. There is a little bit of a wobble there. You can probably see it there on the locomotive. from side to side. So I would be concerned about that if you were running at higher speed. Really, you wouldn't be running this prototypically at much higher than what I'm running at here. You'll notice the coaches are really smooth and they sit on the track really well. They weigh in at just over 150 grams, but I actually feel a little bit heavier than that, but they're really good quality with those metal wheels, and so really these coaches run excellently. They're top notch. So a very satisfying running session, very enjoyable, very pleased with it. This is my only locomotive that I have, only Irish locomotive, steam locomotive, that is, and it's certainly very acceptable. No DCC control, of course, and it certainly lacks the refinement and the kind of low speed performance that you get on a modern steam locomotive model. So I'll cover that later on when we do the summary and ratings. Okay, so let's get into the summary. So we'll take a step through each of the components of the set, and we'll give a rating here based on the year of introduction 2003 and the current year 2021, and I'll do a scoring out of 5 for each item. So for the power controller, I think it's for what it is, and these are very simple, straightforward components. It's got the modular power supply, which most of them have these days anyway. It's got this low starting voltage, which I do like, and a good linearity. I'm giving it a 5 out of 5 in 2003 and a 5 out of 5 in 2021. It's as good as anything you'll get, in terms of this type of controller. The oval of track, again, I'm giving this a 5 out of 5 for 2003. It's a generous radius 4 oval, which is not usual. Usually, typically at radius 2 or 3. It has this plastic underlay, which I think could be very convenient when running on a carpeted type environment. But obviously, it doesn't work so well on the wood underlay that I had here. And it could be difficult to kind of integrate that into your layout. So this track may not be reusable so much if you've got an existing layout, and there is no kind of track mat equivalent. Still, it's very good track, and it's a nice setup. So rating that as a 4.5 in the current year. The coaches themselves, the main issue here really is that they're not based on any specific prototype Irish coach. They are repaints of these panelled 57-foot LMS coaches. That said, those are very nice coaches. They are of that era in time. They've got metal wheels. They've got that very nice rubber corridor connector. Very good runners. And I'll say they will run down to the radius 1. Probably just borderline on radius 1. As I say, when I ran on that Lima radius 1, which is just under, they did actually have a problem. That problem is actually due to some of the underbody detail actually hitting off the bogie and preventing the bogie from turning that extra bit on the narrower curve. But really, that is not a problem when you consider these coaches. Most people won't be running these on radius 1s. So I'm rating these as a 4.5, both in 2003 and 2021. These coaches stand up really well today, and you'll see that if you look at the separate review I did on them. Now, the locomotive, I think this is the area that probably ages the worst. It is a nice liveried, nicely prototypical locomotive of this type of locomotive. So from that perspective, it's good, and they're positives. It does run fine on all of the radiuses of track without any sort of derailing issues on points and diamonds, etc. There is that visible wobble, however, as you would have seen. There's no tender pickup, so that impacts the performance, particularly at the low end, and you have to run this at this minimum of 20% speed. It is relatively light, and there's practically no weight at all in the tender. When I took this out of the box, the tender wheels were actually very noisy. I had to oil them. Now, that said, this has probably been sitting in a box for a few years, so that's maybe to be expected. So I think appearance-wise, it is quite good. There really is no cab detail. I mean, that's one of the issues with it. And I said that detail in the coal in the tender isn't that detailed either. So it isn't up to the expectations of a 2021 steam locomotive model. If you're an Irish modeler, this is as good as you're going to get right now in terms of your ready to run steam locomotives. From that perspective, most people are just glad to get it, but it has to be said it is a 20-year-old model now, and it does tend to show its age a little bit. And of course, it doesn't have a DCC socket in it. You can upgrade it to DCC, and there are a few links I'll put in the description as to how to do that. I haven't done it myself. It might be something I might take on as a project. would need some work to do that. And whether that's worth actually doing is another question, particularly if one of the major vendors was to come around and produce an up-to-date steam locomotive for the Irish modeller. So this one reduces in score from 2003 from 4.5 to a 3.5 in 2021. That's really representative of the fact that it has aged a bit in terms of its capability in that time. So in terms of the scoring, this is taking the set as a whole and kind of aggregating the scores. I think in 2003 this was a really good set, and I put an overall score there of 5 stars. It is on the premium end for sure, so it's a pretty costly set and would have been back in that time, but it's a very high quality set for that time, very good performing, generous oval of track, etc. So really I would have said this was a highly recommended set. Anybody would be only too glad to get this set. As I say, if you found this under the Christmas tree in 2004, you'd have been really, really pleased. It doesn't stand up quite so well in 2021, but slightly different reasons, which I'll get into. The running performance obviously isn't as good, and this is all down to the locomotive, of course. The appearance in detail isn't as good. The extras and variants aren't as good. You do expect DCC now, for example. The build quality and packaging, the only slight reduction there is some little bit more molded inserts to protect the coaches and locomotive in the box. That's the main thing. That's the reason for the half star there that you would get on a more modern set. You get a little bit more protection. The price value is actually better, and I think at the sort of prices that you pay for this set today, which would typically be in the range of 150 to 250 euro for a mint or very good condition second-hand set. I think if you're getting a sealed box version for a collector, you're probably going to expect to spend more than 250 euro for that. But again, depending on the condition, you can get, I paid 230 euro for this particular set, and I think that was pretty good value. If you look at the cost of the individual locomotive and the cost of those coaches on their own, you'll far exceed that. So I think from a value perspective, it's improved because of the inherent value of the component parts. The overall score is lower. Still recommended though, in terms of getting an Irish liveried locomotive and coaches from the steam era. This is still a really great option. And so I'm saying it's a recommended for today. Score isn't as good as it would have been in 2003. The locomotive has aged a bit and is showing its age, but this is still a nice set, and hopefully you've seen that from taking it out and running it. It's still a very presentable set, and if you do want to upgrade to DCC, there is potentially a little mini project for you to do that. So I think it's still recommended. So what are my final thoughts? So there's no doubt that this particular set was a premium priced offering in its day, and for anybody who was able to pick it up, say at a discounted price, they've probably done really well. And I think people have picked this thing up for, probably sub £100, for example. I think people have been able to pick it up at that sort of price level. It is a very nice set. It was in its day. It was an excellent set in its day, and it's still a very nice set today. And as I say, that's the locomotive really that has aged the most. If you are into ready-to-run steam offering, this is currently the state of the art for you. Now, obviously modern steam locomotives from the likes of Bachmann and Hornby, in terms of their higher quality models, have more detail, are much better runners. They come equipped with DCC, etc., and sound. So it's not going to compete with those. And ultimately, if Murphy Models or IRM or somebody else does a new up-to-date Irish steam model, it will be significantly better than this. In the terms of 2021 though, that point about the price that you now pay for these individual components. For example, Mark's Models recently found some of these locomotives, these Woolwich locomotives, in their warehouse. They sold for 180. They sold within 24 hours. I mean, people had no problem paying 180 euro for the locomotive. They were selling the coaches at 50 euro, which is pretty cheap these days because you'll tend to pay anything up to 100 euro for those today. So this set, if you can pick it up in that, 200 to 250 price range, it is well worth it considering the sum of the parts that are within the set. I've always been a fan of those coaches, as I said, so I think they're very, they're well worth getting hold of. Again, they're not particularly prototypical, but they're really nice coaches. And again, until something better comes along, they are the state of the art. So, what's my final thoughts? If you're thinking of buying one, You know, I was happy with the purchase. I'm going to stay with it because it's the only Irish ready-to-run model that I have, steam locomotive that I have. Is it anywhere near as good a performer as my diesels from Murphy Models? No, it isn't. But if I want to do some modelling with steam, this is the only option I have right now. So, interested in your feedback. Do you have this set? What do you think of it? Are you thinking of buying one of these sets? And maybe hopefully this review will help you with that. Please drop your feedback in the comments, and I'll say thanks for joining today. I hope this was a useful review and an interesting review for you. This set is still relevant. They're still out there. I'll say there's 4,000 of them made at the time, so there's still lots of them out there that hopefully you can be able to pick up over the next few years. And if you're an Irish steam modeler, this is certainly something worth considering. Okay, thanks for joining today. I look forward to seeing you on the next review. And in the meantime, happy modelling.